Dateline, Arlington. Special Edition. For a year, the erstwhile wannabe candidate with a reputed failed political career, for many attorneys against whom he has battled in courts over the past year, he ended every message with the Judaic phrase of hope, next year in Jerusalem, and then, as the new year rang in for 2019, he suddenly stopped repeating it. And, on January 2nd, one day after the celebration of the new year, Major Mike Webb was making yet another appearance in court for observance of his 53rd birthday. But, for most persons, probably not ever interesting as one local news publication described him, a day wasted in court would place a damper on the occasion, but Major Mike Webb was in the Arlington County Circuit Court arguing pro se against attorneys from what is reputed to be the best political law practice in the nation, who were retained by former Democrat Party vice presidential nominee, and current incumbent senator from the Commonwealth of Virginia Timothy Michael Cain. And, on the same day, with not even a reference to alleged past indiscretions, the formerly internationally notorious Major Mike Webb, who had graced the pages of Rolling Stone and even Nigeria Today, and who had entertained audiences on Jimmy Kimmel Live, was remembered in a birthday notice in the political trade magazine for Washingtonians, Politico. The amazing narrative seems to be lifted from classical literature lore of the tragic hero, exalted to be humbled and humbled to be exalted, of a Dantean journey into the circles of hell upon fleeing from wild dogs in a dark wood, upon guidance from the appearance of Beatrice, the symbol of Grecian wisdom, or mythologically a rise of a phoenix from the ashes, for simply to survive and endure over 1 year of litigation against some of the best attorneys to be found in the suburbs of the nation's capital, the best legal market in the nation, from which he has, quizzically been unable to obtain even an interview after his debut in the politics of Northern Virginia, the former fiefdom of former Congressman Jim Moran, who personally honed an image as the intimidator, and who the Federalist identified upon his retirement as the worst congressman in the nation. Often in the rhythmically spiritual tradition of the black Protestant churches from where Major Mike Webb finds his family roots, even today, on a Sunday morning, you may sometimes hear a congregation begin to sing with rejoicing sound, "If it had not been on the Lord on my side, tell me where, oh where would I be?" And, by some wondrous occurrence, Major Mike Webb is the principal litigant in a lawsuit against the Arlington Public School Board that decided that the honorable name of Lieutenant General Robert E. Lee was so offensive that it had to be removed to protect a politically correct culture, and that case is on petition before the Supreme Court, the highest court in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And, in that case, without any legal representation, he is standing off a highly paid team of attorneys whose only argument is that they did not receive his complaint, it having failed to provide them notice of a pending lawsuit because of defective service. Was it the hand of the Lord that caused the sheriff, for the first time in the history of the Commonwealth, to fail to properly serve a defendant, or the lies from someone against the Lord? How about the secretaries that the attorneys for the Arlington Public School Board claim received the complaint, but did not know that they were not authorized to accept service of process? And, was it the hand of the Lord that caused their attorney to walk into court and make a general appearance and argue that if he had received the complaint, the actions of the school board member, Monique O'Grady, while still a candidate for school board, were protected under the doctrine of sovereign immunity, a defense which in itself opens Ms. O'Grady and everyone who approved the payment for legal services guilty of a grand larceny embezzlement of government funds? Was it the hand of the Lord that had touched the hardened heart of Linda Erdos, the assistant superintendent, to release a copy of the invoice after over a month of denials to provide evidence of the crime near the midnight hour after Major Mike Webb made a call for the evidence at a regular meeting of the Arlington Public School Board? Was it the hand of the Lord that had touched the hardened heart of Linda Erdos, the assistant superintendent, to release a copy of the invoice after over a month of denials to provide evidence of the crime near the midnight hour after Major Mike Webb made a call for the evidence at a regular meeting of the Arlington Public School Board? The sheriffs in Virginia have a perfect record of completing service of process, and the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia have long determined that if you have sufficient knowledge to make a general appearance in a court as a party to make a motion that you never received a complaint that was filed with the court, that simple act is prima facie evidence that you, in fact, had received the complaint, and the requirement for any formalities of service are thereby waived as a matter of law. Yet, with hard-ended hearts, against the Lord and all that is right, they continue to pay new attorneys from public funds to defend against the crimes perpetrated in connection to a political campaign, constituting a perpetuation of a grand larceny embezzlement of public funds that has the potential to send someone to jail for 20 years, and they continue to fight for a lost cause that no prior law recognizes as a valid argument. On January 23, 2019, Major Mike Webb took his most recent step to assure that justice flows like waters and righteous like a mighty stream, filing a petition for a writ of mandamus against the Commonwealth Attorney for the County of Arlington, Theo Stamos, to bring formal criminal charges against Monique O'Grady for a crime about which that office has possessed sufficient evidence to prosecute since October 15, 2018. On that same day, and in that same petition, Major Mike Webb proffered the demand that an internet troll, who has operated under a false name since at least the early 1990s, presumptively for political purposes, and in violation of federal laws that make it a Class E felony, punishable by fine and or up to 2 years for each transaction, also be held accountable and charged for his crimes, also providing the physical address of this person, even undiscoverable on county tax records but residing in one of the wealthiest suburbs of Arlington and abutting a golf course. Documentary evidence corroborates that this anonymous individual that local law enforcement and the Attorney General of Virginia, Mark Herring, have refused to question, investigate, arrest or prosecute is connected to a criminal element in the country of Czechia and has worked to affect the outcome of elections for Democratic candidates in Northern Virginia, including Ms. O'Grady, Congressman Don Beyer, and Senator Tim Kaine. Physical evidence has corroborated that this anonymous individual, upon the event of becoming exposed began, as is the historical pattern of internet stalkers, who are responsible for up to 85% of femicides, to continue their nefarious enterprise in physical violence manifesting in the real world. To date, since December, Major Mike Webb has suffered at least 2 slashed tire sidewalls, 2 smashed computer screens, and multiple other instances of violent mischief. And there is further evidence that this protected individual, acting under the veil of anonymity and with protection even by local law enforcement, had intended to continue his violent acts with the purpose of culminating in either felony murder or murder in the second degree. Recognizing the physical threat that this deranged individual represents not just to himself, his family and his friends, but also others in the community, on December 3, 2018, Major Mike Webb presented a protective order to the General District Court for the County of Arlington, which was summarily dismissed by Judge Richard McHugh, with the pointed question 0 on as to whether Senator Timothy Kaine, the only party named in the petition who eventually retained lawyers to make a general appearance in the court to defend against the suit, had ever personally threatened Major Mike Webb. So concerned was the senator from Virginia, already, along with Congressman Beyer, who has refused to enter an appearance in the protective order hearing, after having law enforcement officers from the Alexandria Police Department issue a prank call from the police headquarters to threaten a protective order against Major Mike Webb for representing a threat of grave bodily harm to the congressman and his wife, implicated in the offer of an attempted bribery offer of a federal job to persuade Major Mike Webb to withdraw from the 2016 congressional campaign, that he retained the legal services of Perkins Coie, LLC, by reputation the best political law practice firm in the nation, to square off against him in the Arlington Circuit Court for the appeal. Attorneys for Senator Kaine, a graduate of a Jesuit high school, who has adopted from the mission statement of that religious institution the words, "A man for others," argued to the court that Major Mike Webb had no legal right to seek protection that would benefit even members of his family that might be used in efforts to continue a reign of physical and virtual terror, but citing to a provision in the Virginia Code that would protect his niece and nephew from any abuse that they might suffer from him, and not the provision used to determine which persons have primary responsibility for their continuing health and welfare. Attorneys for Senator Kaine, the man for others, went to the extent to deny that the senator even knew of or supported the activities of Blue Virginia, the progressive blog operated by Arlington, Virginia's Lowell Feld, whose blog banner proclaims that Senator Kaine personally reads it every day. But, More disturbing is the fact that in the same hearing in which Judge Daniel Fiore II proceeded to dismiss the petition filed by Major Mike Webb, in a courtroom where there was standing room only, was personally escorted by the bailiff to a seat directly next to the attorney for Senator Tim Kaine, a female who had, in pleadings to the court, highlighted his alleged indiscretions suggesting pornographic indulgence, where Major Mike Webb reports that that attorney took the opportunity to engage in some questionable foot play, brushing several times against his leg while they sat and waited for his case to be heard. More disturbing is that while the very attractive female attorney for Senator Tim Kaine repeatedly engaged in unwanted sexual advances without apology, Major Mike Webb personally witnessed Judge Daniel Fiore not only invent a provision of the garnishment exemptions for a Caucasian litigant, citing to a provision that appears nowhere in the Virginia Code, but also, upon noticing even the confusion of the attorneys for the litigant, offer himself to draft the opinion in his own hand, having just decreed a new law, while not even one attorney in that crowded chamber and armed with an electronic mobile device even dared to check the authority that that member of the judiciary had just claimed was always there. And more disturbing, in a congressional district where progressive male political leaders market themselves as supporting the interests of women, taking pictures being surrounded by women, and even unwaveringly standing behind their commitment to support a woman's choice to have an abortion, a progressive, wealthy, male Caucasian judge declared inconsequential and insignificant the documented evidence of a felonious actor, with a known address who has been protected by law enforcement and engaging in violent conduct that is chiefly responsible for the deaths of single women, and dismissed the complaint, despite the fact that a petition for a mandamus for the arrest of the individual responsible for the actions had been filed the day before in the same court, an individual about whom Senator Tim Kaine and his staff are intimately aware, and in a matter in which his staff have conveyed the pretext of his personal concern, but has refused to manifest his expression of concern in any public statement nor in communications to encourage or assist responsible law enforcement to apprehend the violent actor. Neither has Senator Tim Kaine, nor Congressman Don Beyer, made any official or unofficial statement of concern nor interceded on a personal basis regarding the eviction of Major Mike Webb from a commercial lease in Alexandria, Virginia in March 2018, on the expressed reason that it was because he was opposed politically to both Washington legislators and opposed to the issue of legal abortion. Neither has Senator Tim Kaine nor Congressman Beyer made any official nor unofficial statement or action regarding the arrest of Christians who entered the second busiest abortion facility in the Commonwealth of Virginia in December 2017, and apprehended for trespass in an arrest in which there is physical and documentary evidence to support that police engaged in illegal searches and seizures and violated Miranda rights. They have been silent, in a malicious prosecution that was pursued in violation of cherished pretrial rights, to include refusal to release evidence that was at least exculpatory under Maryland v. Brady, a decision by the United States Supreme Court, by constitutional authority, the highest court in the land, and which there is evidence that a judge in that court engaged in willful blindness not to examine the evidence that would present harmful error to trial rights, meriting an automatic acquittal of any crime. And they were silent when that same court proceeded to enter a conviction order, in absentia, for a matter that had been removed to federal court, in clear violation of a civil rights law that has been established since 1866 to protect persons entitled to protection under civil rights laws such as protections in public accommodations, and a provision last used to exonerate persons who attempted to integrate a lunch counter in the southern states as late as 1978 after they, too, were arrested for trespass. And they remain silent as an unabashed conservative, not ashamed of the gospel nor to wear a Make America Great Again hat, seeks to request that that federal court carefully reconsider why it decided to summarily repeal a civil rights law, and to at least apply a better explanation than stating that the law does not exist as if just saying it made it so. As the late Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," and Major Mike Webb personally volunteered to defend the interests of freedom when the sovereign nation of Kuwait was invaded by Iraqi tanks to serve as an enlisted man in the infantry to fight for freedom. Major Mike Webb, just 1 year later, personally volunteered to serve with the elite Army Rangers, whose mission is to deploy anywhere in the world within just 18 hours where the interests of the United States are threatened upon the order of the President of the United States. And having dedicated almost 2 decades of military service in areas of special operations, counterintelligence, force projection, force protection, and military training of initial entry soldiers, defending the Constitution against all enemies foreign, as is a mandate under the oath of any official leader elected to serve in the Congress of the United States. Since 2015, that same retired Army Ranger has been encamped, often under the most adverse of physical conditions, fighting on to the Ranger objective, as is declared by their creed, to defend against domestic enemies to that document in our way of life. A. Attention. Do I have your attention? I. Interest. Are you interested? I know you are, because it's all walk. You either close or you hit the bricks. D. Decision. Have you made your decision for Christ? A. Action. Are you ready for action? Do you want an America great again? The time is now. Or never. A. I. D. A. Get out there. The future is in your hands. Back to you in the studio, Mo.
Study one more. Study one more. Ain't gonna study one more. Study one more. Ain't gonna study one more.
This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.